As quoted by Picasso, inspiration does exist, but it must find you working. With this, I, Pravneet Kohli, along with my fellow compeer Sharon Titus, would like to greet a pleasant afternoon to each one of you present here. We would like to welcome Honorable Dean Professor Dr. Sanjeev Bansal Sir, Dr. Paritosh Mishra Sir, Dr. Shikha Mishra Ma'am, esteemed speakers, faculties, students, and august gathering on the 18th day of February 2022 to the 7th Global Research Conference 2022's HR Forum. The theme for the forum is HR 5.0 for managing business transitions, agenda for the new normal. Changing as each moment passes, be it technology, science, manufacturing, or operations. With advancements in almost every field, a new reality has been created in every sense.
Very well said, Prabneet. Human resource isn't a thing we do. It's the thing that runs our business. Amity has always been very encouraging in helping students finding their unique identity in this complex world. Amity is an institution driven towards excellence, leadership, and research. Amity Business School believes and follows this mission and has a rich history related to research-driven projects and innovation under the strategic and visionary leadership of our respected founder president, Dr. Ashok K. Chauhan Sir, our dynamic chancellor, Dr. Atul K. Chauhan Sir, our vice chancellor, Professor Dr. Balvinder Shukla Ma'am, and our most beloved Dean FMS and Director, Amity Business School, Professor Dr. Sanjeev Bansal Sir. The university has scaled unprecedented heights. Now I request our Honorable Dean Professor, Dr. Sanjeev Bansal Sir, to felicitate our guest speaker, Dr. Tanaya Mishra Ma'am, Global CHRO Strides with a virtual sapling.
Dr. Tanaya has a little problem in joining. So Sharon, she'll be joining very shortly. So we can go ahead. The video, we cannot hear the audio. We cannot hear the audio, please.
Yes, ma'am, we are looking into that. I'll move to the next one. I request our Honorable Dean Professor, Dr. Sanjeev Bansal Sir, to facilitate our next guest speaker, Mr. Debrata Mohapatra, VP and Head HR, Schneider Electric India Private Limited, with a virtual sapling.
Welcome, Mr. Mohapatra. Thank you so very much for being there, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is a virtual sapling symbolic of our gratitude, sir. We wish all of you should be in the campus very soon. We have just opened the campus yesterday only. It's bubbling with the crowd. I mean, you can see 2 blocks here with F3 seminar hall and F2 auditorium. You can see you are being monitored. I mean, this program is being watched by number of students here in the physical mode also. And we are also on YouTube also. So I just wish that everything should be clear very soon, and next time all of you should be here in the physical mode, so that we should be having a privilege to give you this sapling in hands.
Thank you. Thank you. Look forward to that.
We are being joined by Tanya Mishra ji also. So welcome, Tanya ji.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Up next, we have Ms. Nandini Das Ghoshal, ma'am.
Please present, I'll just intervene. Please present the sapling to Tanaya Mishra ma'am.
I request our Honorable Dean Professor, Dr. Sanjeev Bansal Sir, to felicitate our guest, Dr. Tanaya Mishra ma'am, Global CHRO Strides with a virtual sapling.
Tanya ji, Dr. Tanya, it's only virtual this time, and as I have just spoken, so we wish that you should be here in the campus very soon and give us an opportunity to give this sapling in your hands also.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Up next, we have Ms. Nandini Das Ghoshal, ma'am, co-founder and director, ION Consultancy International Private Limited, Singapore. I would request our Honorable Dean Professor, Dr. Sanjeev Bansal, sir, to felicitate her with a sapling.
Welcome, Ms. Ghoshal. Thank you so very much for being there with us.
Thank you very much. My honor and privilege.
I request our Honorable Dean Professor.
Pravneet, in the absence of the sound, I think we can all clap, no?
Absolutely, sir.
We are missing the sound, so.
Yes, sir. Sure. I request our Honorable Dean Professor, Dr. Sanjeev Bansal, sir, to facilitate our next guest speaker, Ms. Jayashree Mishra, ma'am, Senior Director and Head, Talent Acquisition, Jubilant Pharmova Limited, with a virtual sapling.
Welcome, Ms. Jayashree. Thank you so very much. I think Jubilant is our oldest partner in all these years. Thank you so very much for being there.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting. It's a privilege. Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev.
I request our Honorable Dean Professor, Dr. Sanjeev Bansal, sir, to felicitate our next guest speaker, Mr. Rajiv Bhaduria, co-founder, My Transform, ex-Group Director, HR, JSPL, and ex-President, HR, ADAG, sir, with a virtual sapling.
Welcome, Rajiv Bhaduria ji. Thank you so very much for being there.
Thank you, Dr. Bansal. Thank you very much.
We once again welcome all the distinguished guest speakers, and now we request Dr. Paritosh Mishra, sir, and Dr. Shikha Mishra, ma'am, to welcome our Honorable Dean Professor, Dr. Sanjeev Bansal, sir, with a sapling as a token of gratitude.
Welcome to the forum, sir.
Welcome, sir. Welcome to the forum.
We feel extremely elated to invite Dean Professor Dr. Sanjeev Bansal, sir. He is an admired academician with a PhD and DLED degree. Under his leadership, ABS has scaled heights and has been ranked in the top 10 business schools of India in 7 successive years. In an acclaimed career span of about 33 years in teaching, research, and consultancy, he has been invited to be a part of several prestigious academic, professional bodies, and in his advisory capacity has steered them to success. He is an avid researcher and has more than 225 plus research papers in prestigious journals to his credit. He has
Pravneet, thank you so very much, Pravneet. Thank you so very much. My students knows me, and all the people present here are stalwarts of their respective fields. So I do not need further introduction. Thank you so much. My apologies, all the panelists. So on behalf of our Honorable Founder President, Dr. Ashok K. Chauhan, our Chancellor, Dr. Atul Chauhan, Vice Chancellor, MIT University of Uttar Pradesh, Dr. Balvinder Shukla, all the faculty, staff, and students of MIT Business School, I extend a gracious and a heartfelt welcome to all the esteemed speakers from academia and corporate, and participants joining from across the globe for this HR Forum of 7th Global Leadership Research Conference 2022 on theme, Leading in the New Reality, Insights into Actions, under the great strategic and dynamic leadership of our Founder President. With this unparalleled vision, focus, determination, MIT Group is now in the top, in the map of the world's well-recognized group globally, with presence in 7 continents, all the 7 continents, and more than 20 countries, with 20 plus states in India. Our presence is there. The school which I am heading now, MIT Business School, was the first school of higher education established in 1995. This is 17th version of our research conference, leadership conference, which was reinvented as Leadership Research Conference, GLRC, in 2016. We all have been witnessing this unprecedented pandemic for 25 plus months now. Leading and inspiring employees amidst a global pandemic is only possible with compassion for workforces and communities. The need of the hour is for leadership to focus inside and then outside. This will enable them to lead from the heart and the mind. Leaders also need to align their approach with the action to take the organization through the crisis. The situation requires clarity and decisiveness for embracing the challenges and managing the transition. As leaders attempt to respond, they must also place the safety of their employees at the core. In addition to the employees, it is crucial to identify all critical contributors to the business, customers, vendors, regulatory bodies, partners, and ensure their inclusion in the strategies to keep the workforce safe. These testing times, we support our teams with empathy and optimism. This will foster the team's focus and that can be controlled as opposed to being consumed by the chaos. This act alone can make a world of difference. HR Forum of the 7th GLRC focuses on these issues. We have today stalwarts from different domains and they will be sharing their experiences of such challenges in giving their valuable insights to the audience. We are thankful to Dr. Tanya Mishra, Global CHRO Strides, Mr. Devabrata Mohapatra, VP and Head, Sindliers Electric India Private Limited, Mr. Bhaduria, co-founder, My Transform X Group Director HR JSPL and President HR ADAG, Ms. Nandini Das Ghoshal, Executive Director ION Consulting International and co-founder, The Story of Me program, Ms. Jayashri Sharma, Senior Director and Head, Talent Acquisition, Jubilant Pharmova Limited. On behalf of session convener Dr. Paitosh Mishra and Dr. Shikha Mishra, on my personal behalf, I again give welcome to all the speakers of the HR Forum on the board. I look forward for an interesting and engrossing session. Thank you so very much all.
Thanks, sir. Thanks, sir, for your wonderful wishes. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. Your words of wisdom will go on a long way with us. We would like to introduce our faculty coordinators. We have with us Dr. Paratosh Mishra, sir, professor at Amity Business School. Sir has 35 years of work experience, out of which 32 years and 6 months have been with the industry. Before joining ABS, he had worked with different kinds of companies such as AFS India and American power major NTPC and public sector undertaking Reliance Industries, the biggest private sector company in India, and Group. He has 2 books published through international publishers, Taylor and Franchises, New York, and 8 research papers published to his credit.
We would also like to invite Dr. Shikha Mishra ma'am, an academician by passion, a certified organization development expert from the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, a certified performance and competency developer from CAMI, USA, a behavioral and communication trainer with 19 years of experience in training and consultancy. Currently working at Amity Business School, Amity University, Noida, as an associate professor in the area of organization behavior, organization change. Her key role includes mentoring, training, and consultancy.
If your actions inspires others to dream, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. We would now request Dr. Shikha Mishra ma'am to introduce our guest, Dr. Tanaya Mishra ma'am and Mr. Devabrata Mohapatra sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sharon. Dr. Tanaya Mishra is the global CHRO of Strides, functioning as CHRO with different companies for the last 15 years. She's been ensuring business growth through partnership strategies. With more than 25 years of experience in the field, she has emerged as an active senior professional who can proficiently formulate workforce strategies while keeping an eye out on the company parameters at the same time. Dr. Tanaya has been a part of diverse organizations and industries, including manufacturing, retail, BFSI, and IT and ITS verticals. She focuses on swift workforce strategies driven by technology-based and future-focused interactive practices that efficiently achieve business goals. She's been awarded India's Best CHR Award in 2017 and recognized among Asia's 40 most aspirational women HR leaders. People Matters in 2018, including many other accolades. Welcome, Dr. Tanaya Mishra. Welcome to the HR Forum. We look forward for your inputs.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. It's a pleasure to have among us Mr. Devabrata Mohapatra, who is the Head of Human Resources at Schneider Electric Private India Limited, Mumbai, he has been a versatile HR leader with more than 38 years of experience in companies such as NTPC, Tata Power, Visa Power, L&T, Electrical and Automation, and now Schneider Electric, a French multinational company provisioning energy and automation digital solutions. Sir has worked in various leadership roles, and his current role as the head of HR has been to steer the huge transition of the people matters in the business from Larsen and Toubro to Schneider Electric. It's been a great journey. Welcome, Mr. Devpatra Mohapatra, sir. We welcome you for your valuable inputs in the HR forum.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It is indeed a precious moment for all of us present here to be guided by such eminent and profound personalities who, through their sheer hard work, have reached their respective goals in real life. We now request Dr. Paritosh Mishra, sir, to introduce Ms. Nandini Das Ghoshal, ma'am, Ms. Jayashree Mishra, ma'am, and Mr. Rajiv Bhaduria, sir.
Ms. Nandini Das Ghoshal is the co-founder and director at Aon Consulting International Private Limited, Singapore, an accredited executive coach and learning facilitator. Other than a rich experience in creating bespoke learning and coaching programs for corporates, social groups, and individuals, she has deep experience in business consulting, consumer insights, and authorship. She conducts corporate and social programs on the topics of brain and behavior, leadership, inner transition, culture, and career. She is the co-founder of a women-centric public coaching program called The Story of Me that has been running successfully in Singapore and India. In the past, she has established a consumer intelligence practice called Insights and More, and has worked with many blue chip organizations and SMEs in India and Singapore. Welcome you to the HR Forum, ma'am.
Thank you very much for having me here, and I'm looking forward to today's session.
Ms. Jayashree Sharma is Senior Director and Head Global Talent Acquisition, Jubilant Pharmova Limited. Ms. Jayashree has more than 20 years of corporate and consulting experience that ranges from assignments predominantly in middle management and leadership hiring across education, consumer goods, and recruitment consulting companies. Prior to joining Jubilant, Ms. Jayashree was associated with Pearson India Education Services Private Limited. She has worked with Samsung India and ABC Consultants Private Limited, besides consulting assignments in various search firms. Welcome you to the HR Forum, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Paritosh. Happy to be here.
Mr. Rajiv Bhaduria is experienced in working with big and complex corporates like NTPC, Reliance CDA Group, and Jindal Steel and Power Limited. He has been a part of the senior leadership teams in these companies for over 3 decades, from 1984 to 2019. Since 1st April 2019, he has been the founder and managing partner at Ebullient, a learning and OD outfit given to redefining learning and leadership paradigms, besides using creative ways to coaching senior executives, especially with a futuristic perspective. Further, with the objective of imparting youth employability skills and to make youth future ready in the face of complexity, he has created Transform, a youth social networking platform that connects youth learning choices to work opportunities. Welcome you, Mr. Bhaduria, to the HR Forum.
Thank you, Paritosh. Thank you very much. I think I was muted. Thank you.
Before I request the first speaker, I would like to briefly put down the, I would like to briefly touch upon the theme of the session. As everyone knows, this is an ever-changing world, and change in the current age in the world has been much faster, bigger, discontinuous, and disruptive. At each stage, even in the short-term horizon, future appears shrouded in a vortex of ambiguity and enveloped in a thick speck of uncertainty. In this world of obscurities, organizations are confronted with cumulative uncertainties and challenges of manifold proportions, not just limited to national, economic, or societal borders, but engulfing the whole world like a small village. Several momentous changes are affecting the world during recent times. On the one hand, organizations have sought to improve operational efficiency and productivity through digitization, optimization, production customization, automation, adaptation, and the like. On the other hand, typically demonstrating how intricate yet intertwined this world has become, the current corona crisis has thrust upon the business world challenges of proportions as was never thought of before. Organizations have modified their work structures, processes, encompassing social, psychological, physical, and technical areas, hitherto unforeseen. And organizations have managed the transitions even as they have kept the well-being and happiness of employees in the middle, and have built capabilities and competencies for the emerging new roles, technologies, and critical skills for the future of HR. With this note, I would move to requesting the panelists. And with this, I would like to invite Dr. Tanaya Mishra, and I would specifically request her to dwell upon how technology is being leveraged for transitioning to a new normal, and that too by keeping the well-being and happiness of employees at the center, and how HR should draw up strategies corresponding to global diversity and cultural ethics. So Tanaya Mishra, ma'am, may I request you to kindly give your discourse in around 15 minutes.
Okay, so Dr. Paritosh, thank you very much. This is really a world of uncertainty, and I think uncertainty is really how it is. So for all my colleagues who are in the seminar, a big hello to you, young ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed wonderful to see you, although not there in person. Today's world is more complex than when it was for us, right? And today, what you as students need to look at, and my delivery is going to be more towards what is practical, rather than giving you anything which is bombastic and out of textbooks. Yeah, I think it's very essential to understand what are the themes that organizations are picking up today, right? What themes organizations are picking up is, how do we make our people future ready? How do we ensure that we build the capability and we build a workforce where, one is agile, one can have, so therefore what it means for everybody here is that how do you be agile as employable workforce that's coming in? So therefore, what are those things that are needed for an organization? Please understand that when we go to campus, it's not about what you've studied and what grades you've got. It's about, are you a fit for the organization, right? So when we say future ready, we map it to the kind of population that's coming in. As organizations, as one of the projects that I led as managing director for Accenture was trying to understand what kind of manpower is going to come in. What is the future of this workforce that's coming in? What kind of offices are we going to have? We had started working in a virtual reality, which everybody now became the new normal. But this is something which I worked when I probably way back in 2014. And that was the way of working. So when I say agile, you have to make yourself understand that what are those skills which are relevant at this point in time? So my question to you quickly, what are those skills which you think are ready for you from the audience? Quickly. I have only 15 minutes.
Students, you can put your thoughts on the chat.
After all, we are digitized in today's day and world. So yes. Come on, folks. Are you listening to me? Had a good lunch? Ready for sleeping? Okay, if it's not coming from you, what really today's day and age is that there are two themes which are emerging, right? One is about understanding artificial intelligence, IoT, metaverse, right? Because today you folks are, the reason why you've probably come in is because you've been told that there'd be a bunch of speakers who are coming, but you'd probably like to be on your gaming console and probably play gaming, or try to earn money through Bitcoins and Ethereum, right? Or PI for that matter. But the world of today is to understand that today the virtual, every organization is trying to make way of how to build the real with the virtual. I still don't have any messages on the chat, so I'm wondering if you're listening to me, but nonetheless. So it's about combining what is the real with what is the transformational. So it's about understanding that. So the big theme to understand is digitization. It's about understanding. We do understand that as the generations are, you're growing up, you are more agile, okay, as people in the fundamental way of DIYs, right, or do it yourself, right? But what is essential to understand is that field is what is booming. But let's not also understand the core and the fundamentals of the organization. So when we go to campuses, we actually we hire for attitude, and the rest is about developing the talent and the skill. Two themes which I want to share with you, immaterial of how digitized you're going to be, and wherever you are in the organization as new workforce, there are two themes that you will remember. Oh, I have an answer actually on the chat. Yeah. What does it say? Being proactive. Okay, so that's my next theme actually. So this is about being adaptive, okay, and being adoptive. Okay, what do I mean by that? So, so let me start interacting with you, because we are supposed to be in a digitized world, right? So when I say adaptive, understand the environment that you are coming in, immaterial of whatever environment that you're going. You have to learn to adapt to the organization that you are in, the culture that you are in, and learn to adopt to whatever are the themes. So if you are in a promoter organization, promoters can change. And I'm sure, Rajiv, while we've not met, we've heard of each other. I was in JSW, you were in JSPL, Anand, my colleagues were working with you. So what happens is, right? So
ACC 2, in fact, Anand was working with you.
Okay, yeah. So what I'm saying is, we know promoters keep changing their themes all the time. So you've got to keep running, and you've got to understand from those themes, what are those themes that you need to work with, and what are those themes that you need to draw. If you're in a multinational, you've got to understand that, I call myself Alice in Wonderland when I went from JSW to Accenture, and I will speak from my own experiences, because everything, I was handling 140,000 people. Then I took an Asia Pacific role, and I had 300,000 people, and I couldn't understand anything because everything was on the system. And for us, from a manufacturing industry, it's all very face to face, high touch, but here it was more digitized and trying to understand. That's when I tried to understand SOC, NOC, phishing, all those terminologies, because that's how one had to educate oneself. So what I'm trying to say is that learn from the environment. The other thing that I want to share with you is, when we every time we used to hire about 50,000 young engineers in my previous role. Here we don't hire as many. But every time that I'd go into an induction, immaterial, everybody wanted to become a CEO. Anybody who had come wanted to become the CEO in probably less than 5 years. But unfortunately, that's not reality. You have to understand that it takes a lot of grit, a lot of determination as you move up and the ladder. And once you move up, and I'm sure in Rajiv's position, or currently where I am, and some of my colleagues, unfortunately, I don't know you, so we're meeting it virtually. But it's not easy. You can go up, but to sustain that is extremely difficult. And in life, it's not about always being successful. When you get a failure, immaterial of how well educated you are, how technology savvy you are, how bright you are, right? It's about understanding that life will throw curveballs at you. And it's for you to understand, pick up that curveball and to be able to pick up those, pick up like a phoenix rise again, right? So I'm sure it isn't easy for anyone at the top. The fact that you're in the top means that you are competent. But the fact, if you are in or out, is because either the environment has not adopted you or you have not adopted to the environment. It's not because you're not good. Similarly, when you're going into an organization or you're facing interviews, and if you're rejected, it's not because you're not good. It's because probably you don't fit into the culture or the scheme of things that the organization has, right? The other one that I want to share with you, and which is to do partially with digitization, is about networking and the social media, right? It's about getting your presence felt, writing, reaching out, getting your circle of influence together to be able to move up in the learning curve. I have twin boys, probably somewhat your age or maybe a little older, who keep on saying that, Mom, when we write on social media, nobody wants to accept our LinkedIn request. But what happens is there's a pattern. You know someone, and then you have to build it from there. So don't be disappointed in the fact that somebody is not accepted your request. Things are never easy for anyone. For instance, I will give you a little example for myself. I decided to take a break when I was in the peak of my career to look after my mother, right? And by then I was looking after Asia Pacific, 300,000, very large population, doing extremely well in my career. But I decided to make a choice. And when I decided to make a choice, I thought it'd be very easy to get up. I say this, or I quote this for you, for all of you to understand that it wasn't easy to come back. But, you have to have the determination. At least today, Amity is making efforts in, organizing this forum for you to be able to network, to understand. We didn't have that during our times. And I'm sure, I don't know where Dr. Paritosh studied, but I studied at Utkal University, where we never had anyone, okay, who even bothered about us. It was a blessing that we got our degrees, but the journey from then on was really ours. And the fact that we've reached here is because we've had belief in yourself. Every time that somebody asks me, who do you look up to? For me, who do I look up to is finding the soul within myself and understanding what is it that I really want, or what is it that the soul wants, okay? So I'm going to keep it short because I believe everybody else has to speak. I will probably answer questions, but I just want to end with the fact of saying that, when it says that it's impossible, or it also means that impossible is also I am possible. So I want to reach out to all of you to wish you all the very best. And anytime that you need anything, please speak. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Tanaya. It is in fact with very insightful insight that comes from within to be understood to the students in their language and at their level, to brought out the things regarding how they could leverage on technology and as well as social networking. Yes, I studied in Jawaharlal Nehru University. There is a lot of opportunity for political networking, but definitely not networking from the point of view from which I did the career later. Okay, so with this note, I would request our next speaker for the day, Mr. Devabrat Mahapatra. Looking at the organization he comes from, that is Schneider Electric, which envisions an all-digital, all-electric world. May I request you? Am I audible? Okay. Yes. Okay. Looking at the organization he comes from, that is Schneider Electric, which envisions an all-digital, all-electric world, may I request you to please throw some light on the digital experience that Schneider Electric as an organization is vociferously espousing, and it cherishes to bring in, and also in the process reflect on what challenges or opportunities you see for HR in this change. Over to you, Mr. Mahapatra.
Thank you, Dr. Paritosh. Thank you, the Amity team. Thank you, Dr. Bansal, for inviting me to be part of this forum. I'm delighted to be with you here today. And I also look forward to this interaction with the esteemed panel members, because it will be a good learning experience for me. I'm looking forward to that. In fact, to respond to you, Dr. Paritosh, let me give a little bit of a context, and then I will take you there. We all know about this pandemic. We know that it has been a hugely disruptive event. right? And something that probably we haven't seen before, and something that we would least likely to see again. Perhaps we would not like to see at all. But this event, if we compare with other major events that we hear of, the world wars or the Spanish flu or whatever, I think if you look at, this is one event which has had a major impact on the way we work, right? And that's probably the reason why today, some of us are talking about a period before Corona, a period after Corona, right? We say that there was a period where we work very differently and period after Corona where we'll probably will work so very differently. So that's so if you look at this pandemic has had a very, very serious impact on the working population, on the way we work, on the way the workplace is organized, and all that. Okay. To my mind, I think this pandemic has triggered two very important things or thoughts. One is it has forced both people and organizations to rethink their strengths, right? I think there is a message in that. And the second, to reevaluate their beliefs. Why I'm saying this is because suddenly all of us, whoever thought that this is my strength, this is the core area, this is what I'm good at, this is how I have been working, all that had gone for a toss. Let me give you by a couple of examples. Think of even HR. My esteemed panel members are here. And, as we grew up in the HR domain, I know there was a lot of emphasis on touch and connect. I know my bosses would say, drop that telephone, walk across to the table, talk to that gentleman and sort it out. So there's a way we would connect with people. It was important that we maintain that touch. It is important for us to maintain that connect. And the people who could do that well were considered, very good HR guys. I know there are many in the IR field also because we worked in factories. So we know that how many things that could be really sorted out by sitting across the table, right? Now, suddenly, think of it, very suddenly, something has come in which has taken away all that. Now you can't really connect physically the way you wanted to. That touch is not there. You are sitting at a distance. You are connecting through a digital mode. So what it does, that suddenly pushes that individual to think, is that the right thing that I was doing? Or am I skilled enough to do it? Am I good enough in the new environment? So these questions of, asking yourself that whatever is my strength, can I rethink my strength? Is my strength continues to be strength in the new normal? I think this is one question this pandemic has forced us to ask. Similarly, a lot of our beliefs that things work this way, that things are, if we can continue it in this way, this is the right mode of working. Even organizations, they all believe that this is probably the way to work. Nobody, not many organizations, some people did, but not many organizations adopted a kind of a work from home that we are seeing today. But suddenly what has happened? This pandemic has forced everyone to relook at all these processes, to relook at the way we thought that, or we believed that this is the best practice. I think that has gone for a toss. So two important lessons for all of us in this is that, can we continuously reassess what we consider our strength? Number one. Can we consistently question what we believe is the right thing to do, right? Right thing not in the sense of right or wrong, but right thing in terms of what is the most appropriate business model, what is the most appropriate way that we would be working. Now, why I raise these 2 points is because when we look at it from an organization perspective, we see some very interesting things. An individual who suddenly becomes uncertain, an individual who suddenly becomes very anxious about whether his strengths can continue to be his strengths in the new normal, An individual who starts thinking that, okay, I have been doing a job or a business in a particular way. Is that the right way? Should I be looking for something? When that thing comes to your mind, I think the individual needs a lot of support from the organization. So that support, what we did, we provided in two ways. One is helping him build his skills for the new normal. That's one way. And the other way, taking care of his physical and mental well-being, right? So that he is comfortable enough, that he is mentally right there, is good enough to take up the new challenges. Obviously, it is a, someone mentioned when they were talking about me that we were in part of Larsen and Toubro. A major transition happened during this time, and we moved in from a Indian company to a multinational to a global organization. And global organization has its own ways of doing things, ways of handling things. And in that, what are the things that have worked very well? One thing that has worked very well is in terms of the organization taking care of people, coming across as a very caring and concerned company. How did the organization do that? Each one of us who moved into the new organization were provided with a mentor, were taken through, even in the pandemic, in those periods of the pandemic. We in fact, there are plenty of people in Snyder whom I have still not met, right? Pandemic has been going on for 2 years and we have been running the business for 2 years, but we haven't met. It's all happening virtually. And all of us have learned to adapt. Now, Tanya was talking about adaptability and adaptiveness. And I think that is one of the qualities that we would probably require from every one of you. No matter how good you are, no matter how good in a particular domain, or you have a particular proficiency and all this thing, this pandemic tells us that things can change very fast. So how quickly you adapt into the new normal, how quickly you can move to the new normal, that will define you in the years to come. The other aspect is, what are the skills that we require? Now, obviously, in a digital world, you have specific automation skills or application skills. But more importantly, what we have understood, that this is a world in which data analytics has come up as a major skill. Over and above all the digitization and other things that we do, on top of it sits what we call an analytical software. So handling that analytical software, analyzing that software, ensuring how the things are moving, and churning, making sense of millions of data points has become a skill in the new normal. So can you do that? It's not that this skill was not existing earlier, but the amount of data that you could get was humongous. So can you identify the real metrics? Can you identify the real essence in that data? And can you capture that and can you move it? So that will be a big challenge for every one of us. People like you who are in the, who are moving to the new roles in the new organization, who will be looked after as the new managers. So that would be one interesting expectation from all of you. Other than that, I think what we are all looking at, just give me a second, is how you, like I said, that one is building skills, another is of course building how you manage people, right? Because as leaders, whether you are working at managing a small team, large team, or a very large team, the expectation will be how you manage these teams. Now, imagine the situation in a pandemic. People were affected. Their families were affected. They themselves were affected. So, what are they expecting from an organization? What are they expecting from their managers? What are they expecting from their leaders? I think the organizations which took a lot of care of people, which showed the right amount of concern, which were available for their people when they needed it the most, are the organization which will continue to succeed. Now, we need those kind of people. Behaviorally, we need those kind of people who are tuned to their team's needs. A lot of concepts and thoughts have been questioned during this pandemic. Since we are working in a virtual world, since we are working all over the place and all that, in the company, what we focus a lot on is trust. It's a kind of a charter for us. So, do we trust each other? Do we trust the environment around us? Do we trust our people? Do we trust our teams? How much we trust our teams? Because when we are working in an environment where you are being assessed on the basis of your outcomes, not so much because your efforts are difficult to quantify. And if it is outcomes, then we probably work in a very, very trust-based world. So how you build that trust in the organization? The other point that our organization, many of the organizations have been doing it, that we also looked at well-being, and well-being in multiple respects. The physical well-being, which I just said that how you responded to people in those critical times. We also look at the psychological well-being, now how people are handling this, there are many people, we talk about this issue of people being extraversion and introversion people, right? And you imagine all these extraversion people who have been asked to stay put in their homes and do all the work sitting from there. And many of them had issues to adjust to that new norm. And many of these guys required support. So we also have a system called Sati, where you can anonymously connect to a counselor who can provide that. More than physical and psychological well-being, we also looked at what's called social well-being, because we are all social animals. And the pandemic ensured that we are all so far away from each other. We don't connect. We have to be at home, and the touch and connect that we are so fond of is all digital. So we did a lot of things to make people connect socially. So there are a lot of checkpoints, which are check-ins that used to happen from time to time. We allowed people to come together virtually and do a lot of celebrations of things, so that feeling of being socially connected continues to be there. So overall, if I put it this way, the organization looked at both building skills internally and also defining some of the critical skills that would help in the new normal, both from the point of view behavioral skills as well as technical skills. And the organization also looked at how we handle the physical, psychological, social well-being of people. So these are few of the thoughts that I can leave you with, and we'll get into the question answers and answer more. Is that fine, Paritos?
Yeah, that's fine. Depending on time, depending on availability of time and questions, maybe I'll request you again to come back. Okay. So thank you, Mr. Mahapatra. And moving forward, now I invite Ms. Nandini Das Gosal, who is a specialist in looking at humans from the lens of applied neuroscience. So, ma'am, with this context, may I request you to please elaborate on some of this and how it could be used to predict the future of work, how employees will find motivation and engagement working in hybrid settings where technology is defining work, behavior, and productivity. Over to you, Nandini Das Gosal, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Paritosh. I would like to share my screen as I have a little bit of a presentation for the panel and the students. Just allow me a few moments to do that. All right, so thank you very much for having me in this forum. And I was there yesterday when our chairman, Dr. Paul Brown, presented his thoughts on leading in the new normal. And today I'm happy to present some of our work in this area. And it's wonderful to also interact with the panelists and hear their lived experiences of how they managed their work and their interactions and the insights that they had in the pandemic. So lovely to meet all of you. And it's wonderful also that students are listening in. And what is even more wonderful is that they are there in their physical self. And a lot of my presentation today is about that. So the topic I have chosen is honing the art of leadership in the new normal, and we'll see why we are saying honing. But before that, I just want to uh, build a little bit of context about what were leadership's biggest challenges as we are at the start of 2022, and we have survived 26 months approximately of the pandemic and gone through all kinds of challenges which leadership had never seen before. So we have done a lot of work on this. We even did a research last year where we interviewed around 70 top CEOs and senior leaders in organizations across India and Singapore. And some of the findings I would like to present to this panel today. So we keep talking about challenges, but I'm taking the opportunity to go a little bit deeper into what those challenges really mean for leaders. So everybody talks about this thing called the Great Resignation. There's a statistic which is floating around that 4 million people in the United States actually resigned in 2021. And after that, this term was coined, this Great Resignation. But actually, if we ask ourselves, is it true of Asia? Is it true of India? And we find that there are reports which say that essentially more than 62% of India's workforce in a Microsoft trend studies are saying that they intended to look for jobs outside their industry. And one can ask oneself why. Why is this happening that for the first time in the history of work, people are looking for jobs outside their industry? It's a huge challenge. Second thing is that there's no physical sense of an organization anymore. And Mr. Mahapatra alluded to that just a little while ago. And in the one-on-one interviews that we have conducted last year, this was the single biggest thing that came up from all the leaders as a major challenge. They have had to exert their leadership skills in spite of not having a physical sense of the organization. And this has a huge implication in terms of how they feel about their leadership style. So they're not able to put words, exactly the words, but they are saying, I miss meeting people in a coffee shop, or I miss meeting people informally, and my relationships are not building. So if your relationships are not building, you are not able to influence people the way you were able to influence them before. And we will go into this a little more later. The third point I want to talk about is low self-motivation. Now, this is very much at the heart of the Great Resignation. You have leaders who have talked about not having any separation between work and their personal lives, because from the morning the calls start and they continue right up till the night, and for some leaders it is right up till the midnight, and they are having to handle crisis. They are having to handle their own personal crisis because everyone was affected in the COVID. And this is leading them to ask deeper questions about what the hell are they doing in their jobs. So this low self motivation is a big factor. In fact, in a very interesting study, Harvard Business Review basically asked some 25 odd leaders to keep a journal for more than 2 months in which their deepest emotions were recorded. And there's an article on that. Again, it talks about low self-motivation. I don't want to stress too much on burnout and anxiety, but there is enough and more evidence around us about handling people with burnout and anxiety. So I'm talking about it from a leader's point of view. That on one hand, I am having low self motivation myself. I'm challenged because I don't have a physical sense of an organization. And on the other hand, I have, for the first time, I'm being asked to handle burnout and anxiety amongst a huge number of people. And the last one that I want to call out is that even before the pandemic, this factor had already started, where leaders were asked to lead a group of people who are popularly called the millennials and Gen Z, and a lot of the Gen Z would be listening here, who are behaviorally very, very different from Gen X, which is us, and the boomers, and they have a very different behavior. And in the pandemic, this behavior surfaced in a very big way, and I will talk a little bit about it. So, if we do this analysis, we see that actually leadership has never been challenged more than it has in the current situation. What do young Indians want from life? And I would love to have a conversation with all the youngsters here who are listening in, that what is it that they really want from life. I just want to point out a few things quickly before we move on. That 63% of Indian youth in a World Economic Forum report have wanted to supplement their income through gig work. 72% Indian millennials have said that they will make personal choices about the kind of organizations they want to work for based on their own belief systems. The point that I'm wanting to make here, and I would love to hear from youngsters, is that this generation, which we call millennials or Gen Z, is probably more about realizing their own self purpose. And I'm not labeling them as people who are driven with self-interest, because there is evidence to say that they are extremely stressed as well about the future and their own security. But they are driven to realize purpose, and there is a lot of evidence around that. It would be wonderful to hear more from the people who are watching this. So we are looking at dealing with people who are open, explorers, high on learning, also outspoken, connected, and very, very good at influencing each other. This is very different from leading people in the past, because the level of network and influence and social media connect that this generation has is way different from the way boomers and senior leaders are used to experience. In fact, I have some of my clients who are reverse mentored in their organizations on how to use social media and connectedness in order to have better engagement with people. All right, so all is not lost, even though right now, from the narrative, it looks like HR and leadership is hugely challenged. But where do we go for the answers? What can we look at? I'll just skip this slide, but I just want to focus this group on what does science tell us about ourselves as human beings. Science tells us that human beings are physical energy systems. And here I want to point out that human beings are not human capital. We have grown up in business school. When I did my OB classes, I was always taught that human beings are human capital. And this narrative comes from the industrial revolution, or rather the industrial age, where people were referred as factors of production. So the output that people produce makes them a factor of production, just like land or capital or machinery. And in some way, that has dehumanized what human beings really are all about. The COVID, because of its impact, has shown us that other than being social beings, we are also biological beings and psychological beings. And we are an integrated unit of social, bio, and psychological beings. So, just bringing that awareness is, I think, perhaps some of the answers can be found to the challenges. And the skill that we bring, or we as human beings bring into organizations, is the talent which is manifested as energy for the organization going towards accomplishing self and organizational goals. And I want to emphasize on the word self. Because when we talk about people as factors of production, somewhere we forget that they are there for themselves. And somewhere I think in this race for growth, the corporate sector has forgotten that people were there primarily to look after themselves. And this includes all the leaders. Leaders are also people. So doesn't matter which role we are playing. It doesn't matter what is our skin color. It doesn't matter what cultural beliefs we have, which part of the country we come from, or which part of the globe we come from. One thing is common to every human being, 7 billion people on planet Earth, and that is that we are human beings, social, biological, psychological, and we all have a common unit of control, which is our brains. I would like to spend a little bit of time talking about the brain, as Dr. Paul had yesterday in his address, that the brain is the organ of adaptation. And Mr. Mahapatra talked about adaptability. Ms. Tanya talked about adaptability. The brain is the organ of adaptation. It will always adapt to the challenge which is coming up in the moment. But it is also the organ of relationship. So without the relationship, the adaptation is really not possible. And science is coming out every day with more and more evidence about this. I also want to bring to the notice of this forum that essentially we have gone through 26 months of intense fear. And we have in our brains a fear circuit which was I would say overheated. So basically what happens is there are these two almond-shaped organs in our brains called the amygdala, which gets data from all the five senses continuously. And it is assessed for emotional significance. And in this context, the emotional significance was about danger. We forget that we are biological beings. And if we sense danger, our first instinct is to protect ourselves, because that is the function of the brain. We were given brains by nature so that we could look after ourselves and we could protect ourselves. So 26 months, leaders, their teams, every human being on planet Earth has gone through a continuous series of fearful incidents where they have feared for their lives, they have feared for the lives of their loved ones, they have experienced loss, they have experienced sadness, grief, and all of this. This has had a debilitating impact on not just our mood, but our biology. There are huge cases of mental breakdown, and we are wondering why that breakdown is happening. But it is because the fear circuit in our brain is overheated. So my invitation, there is so much about this that I think we will need a lot of time to process the whole thing. But I will quickly come back to the leader and I will say, what is that the leader needs to do today in order to hone his or her own art of leadership? I think my appeal to this panel would be to first accept that the leader is a human being who is an integrated biological, sociological, and psychological system. And if the leader is not in his or her best form, she cannot give energy to the team. This breakdown of leaders and the resignation will continue to happen till the leaders themselves build reserves for themselves. So, calming our fear circuit and our amygdala is the first and the most important thing which all the leaders perhaps need to do. And I am not saying this just from academic data, I'm saying this from my personal experience as an executive coach, because I have been in engagement with several leaders who have been severely challenged and they have no place to go and express their vulnerability. So, not just for leaders, but for every individual, it is important for you to understand yourself in a biological way. Understand that you are the integrated system. And the other thing is to connect with self. When we connect with self, we actually find rest and revive, practicing wellness, which then builds energy for the next round of leadership. I think there is nobody here, and whatever panels I have heard so far, people know what to do as leaders for other people. But do we know what we need to do for ourselves in order to build rest and reserve, in order to complete this marathon called leadership? Because after all, leadership is not a sprint, it's a marathon. Be courageous about doing things differently. Use that understanding to be empathetic. I see so many training programs on EQ and empathy. But the truth is, we are all born to be empathetic. And when we discover empathy by connecting with ourselves, we can show empathy to other people. So it's really a very simple fix about empathy without undergoing extensive training. Be clever and innovative, leveraging technology, walk the talk, and inspiring a different culture which can accommodate well being as well as performance. And I say this from all the experience that ION has had in coaching and mentoring people, which brings me to this framework of leadership which we propound: connect, be courageous, be clever enough, walk your own talk, and inspire others into action. So this is all from us at ION Consulting. We keep publishing from time to time our research on this whole biology and psychology of being. So if you want to follow us on LinkedIn, please do. And we are open to anybody who wants to have any conversation about the biology and psychology of human beings. Thank you very much for your patient listening.
Thank you, Ms. Nandini. And it's indeed a very important message, a very powerful message, that leading yourself is as important as leading others, if not more. So that's a very, very fine note with which we can move ahead. And
thank you.
Now I would request, just 1 minute. We have amongst us Ms. Jayashree Sharma, Senior Director at Jubilant Pharmova. So, ma'am, may I request you, as the head of Global Talent Acquisition Team, how of Jubilant Pharmova Limited, how to you the future looks like? Or more specifically, what, according to you, are the trends that will shape work in 2022 as you see it and beyond? And in this context, could you also elaborate upon how you are looking at building critical skills and bridging this gap in the future? So over to you, Jayashree, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paritosh. I mean, it's been a pleasure listening to the panelists here. Some great learnings that I've had, some great insights that I've had. So, you know what, we all know and you know, we all acknowledge that last 2 years has been extremely difficult. The you know, the whole COVID thing has kind of really made situations uncertain. There's been more, you know, situations have been volatile, and we expect that this is going to continue for some more time. We don't see it ending just here. While organizations are trying to get back to normal, you know, while organizations have started coming back to normal with hybrid workplaces. So what I feel in terms of some of the trends that may continue in 2022 and the shape of work in 2022 and beyond 2022, of course, there will be rise of hybrid workplace. You know, I think COVID has accelerated the transformation of the traditional workplace. The pandemic disrupted life, but it also created an inflection point for organizations to redefine what they want to be and where they want to go. And it is also heartening to see how employees have supported you know, their respective organizations in this seamless movement to a hybrid workplace. You know, personally, I'm not a person who loves to work from home. So when the pandemic started, the most difficult part for me was to really adapt in terms of how am I going to work from home. I've never worked from home. So I'm sure there are multiple such people who saw that as a challenge, faced that as a challenge. But I think in last 2 years, that's a learning that I've had personally, how to work in a hybrid model. How do you prioritize your work from home versus work for home? So I feel that the rise of hybrid workplace is going to continue, and you know, with the successful model and remote working, employees are also craving for more flexibility, and many will require a convincing explanation to return to in-person work. And organizations that successfully address these questions will open the door to better employee experience, increased loyalty, and access to larger talent pools. And for organizations that fail to address this, will witness a hike in employee turnover. And, you know, Nandini spoke about the Great Resignation. So some of those reasons are also going to add to that, you know, this entire employee turnover piece in future. The other piece that Nandini touched upon was the relationship bit, and I think Mr. Mahapatra, Dr. Tanya, they all touched upon how relationships are going to be critical and important. I think the manager-employee relationship will become more important than ever for hybrid and remote employees, because a manager will become the primary connection through which employees will experience their employers. And managers can make all the difference in the employee experience. I know Mr. Mahapatra touched upon how people started feeling the disconnect of the fact that they were not being in touch In a virtual platform, you can communicate as much, because there's so specific time. The meetings are defined within a time frame. You don't get to do that coffee conversations, or maybe the water cooler conversations where you start, building relationships, getting to know the person more beyond the workplace. I think the virtual piece kind of created those challenges as well, where people were unable to make those connects, and it's going to become more difficult. It's going to become critical for managers to ensure that they create those relationships outside of their managerial tasks. So I think there's going to be a lot of focus on changing managers' mindsets and skill sets from managing tasks to managing the full experience of employees. Because they are going to be the main touch point where the employee is going to experience the whole organization. So I think that skill will become very, very critical. And manager roles will also enhance, to define and work on employee career trajectories, impact of work on their personal lives, and their relationship with the organization as a whole. I also feel that this shift will impact employee association with the organization, and will require empowering managers. And in that context, technology will become very, very critical, relevant. Digital tools will become the key enabler, because when these digital tools, and I think all the panelists who have spoken so far did touch upon the digitization piece as a future ask. So these digital tools will kind of take out the transactional piece from managers' work, so that they get more time to invest with their team members, understand them better, help them better in terms of knowing the organization better, expectations better, and eventually then deliver better. So I feel focus on human relationships as a differentiator will be another key trend that will come out. The other piece, which I think all the panelists again have focused a lot about, and Mr. Mahapatra did speak about how Schneider is kind of looking at it, is the employee wellness. So I feel employee wellness will also become one of the most important metric. So, earlier organizations mainly focused on employee engagement, employee satisfaction, but in the new normal, employee wellness will become one of the most important metric that companies will use to understand their employees. And I think Nandini has spoken a lot about what it means, and what it means for leaders is just not, how you are taking care of your team members. It is also about how individuals are taking care of their own wellness, whether it is mental, whether it is physical, whether it is social, and organizations will focus to add new measures that assess employee mental and physical and social well-being. I was actually reading a recent Gartner research that published, which actually highlighted that 94% of companies have made significant investments in last 1.5 years in their well-being programs. 85% increased support of mental health benefits, 50% increased support for physical well-being. And, we being a pharma, life sciences, chemical space organization, we consider ourselves essential services. We have been also in the front, we have been in the COVID battle front end, and we put our employee wellness before anything else. We have partnered with the leading service provider in employee well-being space and have received overwhelming response from our employees, where, as Mr. Mahapatra was also mentioning, they have a program called Sathi. We also have a program where individuals can connect with counselors. They can talk about their mental well-being. They can seek support and benefit from the program. so I feel those are some of the trends, Dr. Paritosh, essentially that will be the highlight in 2022 and moving forward. So lot of focus around how do we make the hybrid model successful, how organizations will work with their managers to invest more time in the overall relationship building, taking out transaction of work, and the overall wellness space. I think that's a very, very critical piece that every organization has already started focusing on, but I think it will continue and eventually be a differentiator. You asked me another question with respect to how Jubilant is kind of looking at building some of these critical skills and bridging the gap. So I think for Jubilant, I think all of us acknowledge, all of us understand that volatility, uncertainty, change, ambiguity, has only magnified during the pandemic. And organizations are now required to demonstrate skills which Dr. Tanya spoke about, which Mr. Mahapatra spoke about. And these are skills that are digital in nature, skills around adoption, skills around adapting, communication. We are so used to communicating so differently while we have had physical presence in the office, and in a virtual environment where time is limited, where it's just a 30-minute, it's a 45-minute conversation. How do you create that impact? I think all that skills are going to be very, very, very critical, and Jubilant as an organization does recognize that these are skills that needs to be developed, that needs to be taken care of. There's a lot of focus that I feel is also around talent mobility. So organizations are now required to, look within. The retention piece is only gaining much importance with the way the sector is behaving, the kind of resignations that are happening. I mean, in my 20+ years of talent acquisition career, the number of offer dropouts that we see now, I have not seen that ever happening. So I think organizations have started focusing a lot on how to develop talent internally, how to retain talent, how to internally, make use of the internal talent mobility and skills that will help drive agility versus the conventional notion of talent mobility. And we are focusing a lot on building agility by upskilling our digital skills that help shape transformation while approaching work in a more and more location agnostic hybrid models. So our focus sharply moves to outcome-based performance management and agility, adaptability, and resilience of talent. I think those are some of the key skills that Jubilant is focusing on building and ensuring that we are ready for future. So at the end, I would just want to, I would like to end by mentioning that organization must seize this moment to transform ambiguity into opportunity across their workforce and workplace. And to succeed in the future, time for change is now. And I think we all have acknowledged and recognized the fact that change is only constant. I think Dr. Tanya spoke a lot about how change has, made us make so much of, look at changes within our own organizations, the way we work, the way we behave. And I feel change is only going to be constant, and organization will have to keep on revisiting and evolving with all the learnings that we have had in last 2 years with the pandemic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jayashree ma'am. This is indeed a powerful message to the students that change is the only constant. And all organizations also accordingly have to revisit themselves for becoming change ready and converting this crisis that has come up, the humanity has faced, into an opportunity. And I hope the students will draw from there. So we have just one more speaker. So students, please share your questions on the chat, direct it to any of the speakers you want to, and so that we can take them up if there is any. So this brings us to our last speaker of the session, Mr. Rajiv Baduria. So I'll request Rajiv to take up this at two levels. One is I will request him to focus on and he share his own reflective thoughts that emerge regarding what these transitions really mean and what we are talking about when we are talking of transitions and how we manage this transition and what would be the broad agenda for this new normal. And after that, we will have a review of questions if they have come up. Otherwise, I'll again request you to wrap up the session before they close everything. So over to you, Rajiv. You are not audible, Rajiv. You are muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Thank you, Paritosh. In fact, it's really a pleasure to hearing the panel members. In fact, and of course, unfortunately, being the last speaker leaves very little to be said actually and spoken about. But I think you've given me a good context to talk about. So let's actually visit the actual topic that we were also trying to kind of underscore. And it's all about the transition, the new agenda, the new normal. And then what's happening is that, we got to understand the context in which all the civilizational level changes are happening. It's just a move from one phase of extractive industrial age mindset, which Nandini was mentioning about, to a new knowledge workforce era, which is I call the human age, despite all the technology disruption that is taking place. Because in this context, I would like to actually have the students with me. In fact, I can see the two auditoriums in the seminar hall and the auditorium. Students, how's the Josh right now? Are you up and listening? That's very important because for the next 20 minutes, I think you could just have to wait. In fact, and this panel discussion will be soon over. So I think you just pay your attention to what is being talked now. In fact, and particularly the question answer, I think you must participate because I still see the chat box blank. So anyways, speaking of the context, in fact, I'll start with what actually Nandini mentioned about human beings are not human capital. Well, I would say in a context, call it by whatever name you wish to. Well, yes, they are not capital. And that's very, very important because when you use them as human capital, that was an industrial age mindset that we're talking about. So it will not be relevant today. But it's important that even if you call it a capital, it's a capital with a difference. It's a capital because all the other capital actually depreciates. This capital appreciates. And that's very important because the first fundamental thing that I would like to say is that Paritosh, this transition is all about moving from understanding of human resources to human beings, as Nandini rightly put it. So you got to understand that this new age is all about talking of human beings as beings, in fact, as selves, which of course Nandini also alluded to. And I see a lot of research going on in that direction, in fact, and a lot of neuroscientists, in fact, and particularly Richard Davidson. In fact, I've heard, in fact, he talks about neuroplasticity. How can the brain be the cognitive tool, in fact, of adaptive intelligence that is very, very important today. And I'll discuss about what's adaptive. Adaptive is not just taking, a course, in fact, understanding, adapting, upgrading, modifying, and changing yourself. But adaptive is a context. Adaptive is a state of being. When you do not know what you need to do. In today's context, when you say, and Jayashree was talking about the volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, that kind of a situation gives you a context where you really do not know what you need to do, and you've been responsible for doing something. So how do you do when you do not know how to do? That's important. The only obvious thing is you have got to learn. But now just for the next 10, 15 minutes, we'll just try to discuss exactly as to what is it that we need to learn. What has happened happened is that, so there are three problems of humanity. In fact, ever since the dawn of civilization. One is the Paleolithic mindset, which again Nandini referred to. In fact, primarily we are still having a reptilian mindset, that brain, which is the predominant part, and the prefrontal cortex is still limited. And that's a recent, in fact, acquisition by humans, by the way. The amygdala was in fact, and the amygdala hijack was known to humans much more, in fact, before we came to know about the prefrontal cortex. So our intelligence, our rational mind is a new acquisition for humans. We are still driven by, fight, freeze, and in fact, fight mechanism. Either you fight, you either flee away, or you kind of, freeze. Now, things are changing. And what's important is that, this is an age where exponential change of technology is taking place. Parameters are changing, not sequentially anymore, but simultaneously. So therefore, linear extrapolation is dead. So now, before we understand HR is just one element of the organizing principles of an organization. But fundamentally, what is technology change impacting us into? There are 5 sectoral, foundational sectors are getting disrupted today. What is happening? That matter, energy, and information are the 3 fundamental elements which create technology. And when technology is exponential that we see today, there are 3 levels of changes taking place. Technological disruption, that's one thing. And as a result of technological disruption, non-linear accelerating changes, which I said, no longer sequential, but simultaneous. So you have to constantly adapt, upgrade, modify, change, use your right part of the brain, creative processes. Linear extrapolation won't work. You cannot be traveling heavy with a lot of mental baggage. You got to travel light with no mental baggage. You can get the benefit of the past in this situation, but you can't get burdened by the past. That's important, because then it will be like a treadmill. You'll do a lot of work. You'll probably lose your weight, but you'll not move forward. So that's one understanding of the context in which we are living today. Now, after having said that, these 3 changes, which are primarily, and of course, the third one is digital globalization. So world is becoming more interconnected and hyperconnected. Where you talk about IoT, you talk about machine learning, artificial intelligence. These are only tools, in fact, to understand, but they are not human beings who applies them as IoET, Internet of Everything, which means people, processes, big data, and things. They are the ones who are kind of, all together aligning ourselves all over the world. So that's again another change that's taking place, and that's very, very relevant for us to understand. Now let's actually understand what is this industrial age mindset that we talk about. Industrial age mindset was all about extraction and exploitation. It was extracting the natural resources and exploiting human beings. So natural resources and human beings were exploited. And you see, we can have a very detailed discussion on this, but for the time being, let's understand that that's the extractive and the exploitative age. We have moved to the age of freedom now. So what's happening in 20s and 30s is not determined by Corona. Corona, in fact, has been overplayed by all of us. And I'm afraid that talking about Corona is not a disruption. It's in fact a symptom of a disruption. It's merely one symptom, and there'll be many such symptoms, in fact, symptomatic, crisis coming in the way. So working from home, using technology, digitization, that's not going to solve a problem. That's only a band-aid solution. That's only a band-aid solution to address those problems which are being faced by humanity today. The larger context, and I would not call it a problem, I would call it godlike technology. If you can use it, of course, there are negative views about technology, because I think Tanya mentioned about, in fact, the disruptive use of technology, which could actually lead to downgrading humans, in fact, by kind of, being excessively, in fact, intrusive. It creating polarization. It creates, in fact, outrage. It creates, in fact, a false sense of, attachment, detachment, looking for social validation, teenage suicides, and so on and so forth. That's one thing, but we got to humanize that technology. That's also a separate discussion for something else. We got to humanize technology. But what has done? What has this exploitation done? An extractive society, an industrial age, it has actually led us to what is called the 6th extinction event today. The 6th extinction event is all about environment, not being, in fact, even zero emissions, mind you, I don't know how many of you know that. You would appreciate that today's the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere is almost 490 parts per million. Never in the geological history of Earth, it was more than 300 parts per million, even as late as 1950s. So just imagine what damage we have caused in the last 70 years to our ecology, that we have now been brought to the 6th extinction event. And even zero emission will not serve the purpose till you reverse global warming. So friends, we are not talking about just an ordinary change and change being, of course, constant, but this change is humongous. This change is a phase change. This is at the civilizational level. This is not just the rules of the game changing, but the game altogether is changed. And you students must understand, when you require at workplaces, somebody was mentioning that this generation requires a different kind of a culture or cultural attributes. Yes, that's right. You want a lot of freedom, you want flexibility, you want fun at workplace, which in our times was hardly called work. I mean, if you were to ask my father that what is this fun, flexibility and kind of freedom at work, he'll say, why do you go for work? But then that's the reality, because this is the knowledge age and this is the age of freedom that these youngsters would demand. And it's right for you, because now you have to be very creative. You don't have to be kind of, limited or inhibited by the kind of, constricting influences of the industrial age mindset. Now, I just mentioned 10 such aspects of it. And believe me, I'll do it very fast. You see, what is that extraction age? It was the breakdown mechanism, extractive. It was breakdown that you grow a plant, you grow an animal, you extract the mineral, and in the process, a lot of energy is dissipated. So ultimately, in this age of industrial development, howsoever important we would have become, in fact, even in US and Japan, the aggregate productivity was not more than 20%. So we have actually exploited the environment for the sake of it, growth, but the growth has led us to a situation where now we are on the verge of sixth extinction event. The new age which is emerging is like the build-up or the generative or the regenerative orientation of this. So this technology can help us regenerate, because choices are two with us. Either we adapt this technology to improve our, in fact, possibilities which are there. New possibilities are emerging if we catch up and we choose to kind of, ultimately have the future that we want, because there's nothing deterministic about the future. Those dystopia of the future is not relevant. We will have it if we don't do anything, we don't understand where are we, what are we, and we get lost in, those micro issues, and, we get myopic intellectually and we get blinkers, then only it will happen. But if we can broaden our horizons of thinking and we really build it up from genes, from molecules, from atoms, rather than, the larger context of wasteful, exercise of the fundamental use of energy, materials, and this information that we kind of, use the fundamental building blocks. The old age was using scarce resources. So therefore, scarce resources, and today you're using about abundant resources. Now, when scarce resources gives you a mentality of scarcity, competition, growth, grow, otherwise you'll be outgrown, exploit, or else you'll be exploited. So there it was like each one of us looking for a larger size of the pie in the cake. But today with godlike technology, when you have renewable sources of energy, which are never exhaustible sources of energy, wind, solar, and probably, of course, battery would be a contraption, which if you use, it gives us an abundance of thinking. So that's again a change, because the prime driver would not be anymore the scarce resources and scarce human resources and scarce, what we called human resources in industrial age and human and natural resources, but abundance of energy, abundance of exuberance, energy, in fact, which is driven by sun and primarily wind. So that about scarcity to abundance, and that is how it gives you a possibility to increase the size of the cake. So when you increase the size of the cake, you move from competition to a more collaborative, purpose-driven organization context and societal context. Then industrial age had scale and reach. Because you are exploiting for the sake of growth, it has created the most inequitable civilization today. World's 10 business trillionaires own the world's 50% GDP today. Now imagine that is the level of inequality. And you can see the recent Oxfam report. India is no different. India has about just 7 of them having 2/3 of the total GDP of the country. Now imagine that's the inequity in the civilization level. So scale and reach actually became a liability to us, rather than being an asset. But today, network and node. So it will be like horizontally spread, unless otherwise, then, the vertical integrated system that we have today, which is very exploitative and extractive. You had governance also changes from your production. So organizing principles and governance also changes. And therefore, it is more like centralized and hierarchical. And that work order is going to change, because once you choose human beings, then hierarchy and what you call the centralized will not work, because top down to bottoms up. It's like more participative inclusiveness. That is the new transition that we are going to have. Organizational constructs will change, and our root perspective about managing these human beings. I mean, managing is a wrong term, I would say. You can lead people. And leaders are not just at the top. When people say that leaders are humans, I think one of you said very clear, beautifully, that leaders are also humans. But I would go a step ahead. Not only leaders are human, but everybody is a human. And leaders are no special, in fact, being at the top. There's positional leadership. Leadership will come from the way you think, the way you act. I heard, in fact, the topic is about, getting insights and moving from insights to action. So it's like diffuse leadership, which is participative, inclusive, bottoms up. That is the network and node. You use platforms, and that's the, new organizing and governing principles. Then the old system was very high cost, high waste, and high land use and resource use. In today's context, it will be like, when there'll be zero cost beyond, of course, the establishing of the zero marginal cost, provided you have met the initial fixed cost and the operating costs. So zero marginal cost. So there are new possibilities of business models emerging and business transition happening. That is what we have to manage. And that would now be done in a very different governance model, in a very different organization model, where human resource would no longer be relevant. Humans can be used as human beings. They've got to be kind of, transformation of your thinking capacity entirely, and then how you enable that system, and how then you, in fact, ultimately create a bridge between the current and the new one that's going to emerge. Huge physical flows are taking place again. But later on in the information technology and the information, these 5 sectors of information, materials, food and agriculture, transportation, and energy, if you see, these are the fundamental sectors which are undergoing the transformation as a result of technology. They are creating new possibilities, and the whole new way of looking at things and managing things is emerging. So that will actually, from huge physical flows, it will be to limited flows of, high information flow, limited flows of material. So the world is going to change, in fact, transform, because there'll be less of material flows, less of energy, less of consumption of water. So optimizing consumption rather than maximizing consumption and production, and catering to human well-being. That's the possibility. That's how the action plan will have to be made. Then you talk about, we talked about economies of scale, but now we'll have network effects. So that's again a very different kind of, platform to kind of, operate with. As I said, zero-sum game was that, you kind of, you have to exploit, you have to grow, but now you have a more positive sum game, which means everybody can gain. You can have the larger size of the cake and all of you can eat the cake and have it. That's the new paradigm of thinking. That's how human creativity potential, in fact, is actually made out to be. And you can exploit that and then develop new paradigms of thinking, new paradigms of rethinking, I would say. Don't just keep getting burdened by the old, but kind of, create new possibility space. And the whole industrial age was also then built on the mechanical model, the reductionist mindset. And that was because we were kind of constrained by scarce resources and scarcity and mentality. So our mindset was limited. Now, when you have an integrated, evolutionary, and expansive mindset, that's the new. That's what Nandini was mentioning as human resource. That's not the human resource, the kind of transformed human being from the erstwhile human resource. So that's about organic, systemic from systematic. See, in the industrial age, you do things systematically. You have TQM, you have the possibility of doing it right first time. You have balanced scorecard and all kinds of approaches which are talking about exactitudes. Now, when you're living, that's human resource, because human resource also reduced like land, capital, and capital as a resource. So you got to fit into that paradigm of exactitude and standardization, assembly line operations, which actually downgrades you. Now the new would be more organic, from systematic to systemic. Now that's the wonderful change, because when you're doing systematically, you're following an SOP. But when you broaden the horizons, and I said integrated, I would say still evolutionary and expansive, then you get new different possibilities, space, in fact, to look into. And you have that organic and kind of, outlook to let things emerge rather than control. So because when there's a lot of transition taking place, like when Corona was one such thing, there's technological disruption, people tend to go more for control, wherein the right approach would be to adapt, upgrade, modify, change yourself, welcome the change, and then kind of, have a strategy, have a thinking in consonance with it rather than in opposition to it. The whole Indian civilization is actually maintained its sanity, as they say, for 5,000 years, because we always, all said and done, we may still be industrially backwards, but we are thoughtfully, very well integrated because of the fact that we never resisted change. And this is the age for this, as they say, the global and the geographical south for us to emerge, because this is not an incumbent system of industrialization. We can really have a leapfrogging done right now. And that is the new agenda. That's the new normal. The normal would be that there is now a level playing field between North and South. And technology is the grand leveler. You will have to now find a new angle on a level playing field. That's a very different challenge. So once you develop that human in you, that creative potential, that right part of the brain, creative, parallel thinking, that's exactly going to do the magic. And that's going to exist because in the South, and India being no exception, we don't have an incumbents mindset. We are on the edges. We don't have much to lose in the old because we hardly have much of the old. America, China, even today, there's so much of an incumbency mindset. They'll still take time to adapt the new technology, this godlike technology, which will solve the problems. I mean, besides having to manage it, humanizing the technology. There is Tristan Harris, who in this movie called Social Dilemma, I think all of you must have seen the network and the Netflix. And I would urge you guys to see, in fact, if you haven't, Social Dilemma in Netflix. And that's going to be really a mind opener for you, that how you can humanize technology.
Rajiv.
And ultimately, Pratosh, just let me give a minute or two. I understand, but otherwise that thought flow will not change. In fact, and that takeaway would not be there.
Please.
So ultimately, let me just complete the thought process, and then within 2, 3, 5 sentences, I'll complete it. Now, the biggest challenge, what is it now? If you see the big picture of all these changes, where breakdown structure to a build-up structure, from scarce resources to abundant resources, from centralized and hierarchical to more horizontally spread, from top-driven, control-driven to participative, facilitative, bottoms-up approach. That's the transition that we have to manage. That's the root perspective change in the way we redefine things, the way we enable the new structure to come up, and the way we'll build a bridge from performance to transformation together. That's the action plan that we got to create. And human resource people, so-called human resource managers, will now have to get away with that life cycle management process, keeping, just employee engagement. And as I think, Tanya, you mentioned, I think, about the fact that engagement, or I think Jaishri, you mentioned about that engagement and, from this engagement and satisfaction, that's all, in fact, there, that will be there, that will continue to be there, but in a very, very different order of the fact that you got to now respect the individuality, that self within each one of us, in fact, rather than just being treated as summarily, you kind of, brushing it under the carpet under one standardized understanding of what you call the human resource. Ultimately, what happens? Laws of physics have replaced the laws of biology being replaced. That's important. We've now, when we move from physics to biology, and then computers, in fact, computerization or computer technology clubs it together. That's the new algorithmic change in our life. That's the real, we change the algorithm of life. When we merge, instead of physics, we now look at biology, which is more organic, which is more systemic driven, which is more organic linkages, interconnectedness with the environment, with self, and not one, but 10 intelligences, young friends, you will have to actually put in together. And I'll just narrate them, in fact, just one by one, in fact, enumerate them, and I'll close my talk. The 10 intelligence, therefore, in this context, is a very complicated system, but it's very simple. All that it's talking about, that technology is enabling us, it's helping us, provided we are able to catch the essence of it and understand what is disruption and how you can capitalize this disruption. 10 intelligences that you require, in fact. It's not IQ, EQ, SQ, and PQ. These are the 4 ones which we think, emotional quotient, intelligent quotient, and physical and spiritual quotient. But what's important for you guys, who demand fun, freedom, and flexibility at work? I would say entrepreneurial intelligence, which gives you a very different orientation of taking the risk, taking that leap of faith in this era of technological wizardry. The other is strategic intelligence, where people say that, all this talk is good, but how can you transform suddenly from scarce to abundant? That's exactly, you perform and transform together. So I say that don't just jump to either or. You do perform the way you're performing, quarter and quarter results, but now transform. The other is transdisciplinary intelligence. All you youngsters will not be now just kind of, governed by one single, domain knowledge that you've had and you live on that for the rest of the life. You've got to keep on reinventing yourself. using transdisciplinary approach. So from, again, the age would be from super specialists to generalists, not in a sense, in a specialist sense. So you got to be a generalist, but you have to have a specialist sense in that sense. And then ultimately, ecocentric awareness and intelligence. That's again important, I said, because we are on the verge of 6th extinction event. All that we do would incidentally also help the environment. That's exactly the way to look at it. So ecocentric intelligence, and above all, when you are talking about robotics, you're talking about programmable and predictable being done by robots, then you have to have a Socratic intelligence also awareness. That means philosophical aspect. You must have philosophical norms as to where is technology taking us? How is the self, this human being impacted? Ultimately, human well-being is being catered to, or this kind of an inequality that the system has, this liberal economic system of ours has led us into. And last but not the least, you have to have moral and ethical intelligence. So friends, I think it's a tall order transition, and the agenda is very clear. The new normal is that it's not normal anymore, but it's normal now to assume a lot of things that we thought were abnormal. Corona, you'll have to take it in your stride. Corona is not a disruption. Again and again, I'm telling you, don't get carried away by Corona. What Corona did is only a wake-up call. It did not break the system. It has exposed a broken system. And that's the relevant idea that you guys must carry with yourself today. And I think I've kind of, in my enthusiasm, actually, I've just overstepped my time, but I think by 5 minutes. But I think, sorry for that, but I thought I had to make my point clear. I would not have been able to close this unless until I would have kind of said this. So thank you very much for a patient listening. And then I think it's over to you, Paritosh.
Yeah, thank you, Rajiv. In fact, you have done much more than giving your thoughts, and also you've wrapped up everything. So
and actually I've closed it also. So you gave me a clue. So
yes.
I don't have that guilt now anymore of overstepping my time.
And you have closed it also. Actually, there are 2 questions, but we don't have time for questions. So I'll request.
No, I think you have 5 minutes. Others, everybody can. You still have 5 minutes. It's 3:55.
Actually, our valedictory has to start.
Oh yes, please.
In very short time.
Start.
So I'll request the.
That's fine. And I think students need to carry back. Yeah, absolutely.
There are 2 questions. One to Dr. Tanaya, being global HR head, what measures are you taking for an inclusive workforce? Please reply to it on the chat so that
I already have. Remember, I'm from a tech company. I'm ex-tech, so I already have.
Okay. So fine. And they've also, to them also, there is a question what SE is doing regarding digitalization. I'll request you to answer it on the chat. And I request Dr. Sikha ma'am to give the formal vote of thanks.
Okay. The pearls of wisdom will definitely lead to new possibilities. It is an insightful journey of learning indeed from the HR experts. To conclude the forum, I would like to take this opportunity to thank each one of you in equal measures for taking out the time to make GLRC 2022 a success. It is your kind generosity that has made all of this possible. Firstly, we would like to extend our gratitude to our speakers, Dr. Tanaya Mishra, Mr. Mohapatra, Ms. Nandini Das, Ms. Jayashree, and Mr. Rajiv Bhadoria for sharing their thoughts so comprehensively and wonderfully. So the road forward, revisiting and reinventing, managing adaptability issues, deciphering I am possible to impossible to I am possible is definitely the need of the hour. I'm sure each one of us will rethink and re-evaluate their strengths. Honing the art of leadership in the new normal is the biggest talent, and by practicing empathy and walking the talk, we can inspire others into action. Very insightful thoughts on leadership, biggest challenges of 2022 and the great resignation, core factors. Definitely low self-motivation being the core reason was intricately brought up. What young Indians want from life is very, very informative with the changing business landscape. Organizations should look within to manage, develop, and retain talent. Resilience and agility is definitely the need to transform our workplace. We look forward to welcoming you again for the future HR deliberations. We would encourage the HR students to go to the extra mile and remain engaged and constructively contribute to fully reap the benefits of all the effort that went into this ambitious exercise. It is a great privilege to thank our respected founder president, Dr. Ashok K. Chauhan, Chancellor Dr. Atul Chauhan, and our Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Balwinder Shukla, for their constant motivation and guidance. I also take this opportunity to thank our Honorable Dean FMS and Director, Amity Business School, Dr. Sanjeev Bansal sir, who truly blessed the event with his humble presence. I further would like to thank our wonderful and enthusiastic participants and our organizing team of GLRC 2022. Without the incessant efforts that you all put in, it would never have been a smooth process for us. So let me conclude by thanking again for all of you for all your time and valuable insights. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much to all the panelists for enlightening us with the kind words and knowledge. We would like to express our sincere gratitude to all the guests of honors who made time out of their busy schedules to join us here today. We would also like to thank our respected Dean, Dr. Sanjeev Bansal sir, for his steady help and inspiration. At last, but not the least, we thank all the team members for putting up this great event and our audience for being so supportive throughout the event. Thank you everyone for joining us
Please
today.
learn to participate in the forum.
I think
That will give you
absolutely.
more insight.
That was a bit disappointing, I would say. In fact, Paritosh, what you can do, I would request you can connect at least all of us on some kind of, with the kind of, this thing, all the panelists at least. So I think we can continue the discussion, I think, as a group.
Yes,
agree.
so
I would love to get connected.
Yeah, so just to interrupt, to
Wonderful
manage the event,
Absolutely.
the chat was disabled for the participant, right? Otherwise, there were a lot of queries, but again, the paucity of time, we would definitely like you to come again and again share
So-
your valuable insights.
Okay.
Dr. Shikha,
Thank
maybe
you,
some
thank
of the questions can come to us through emails. We would love to
That's-
respond.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you everyone.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you
Thank
very much.
everyone.